Hey folks. Well, looks like 2024 was a bit of a year of decline for paper computer games. We've seen less activity in the PCG Discord, with some people commenting about the server being dead. In terms of this channel, we've seen 56% less views and 37% less watch time than the previous year. We've seen some of the biggest PCG creators like Epic World's PCG turning their focus to other interests like homemade TCGs instead of PCGs. It's starting to look very possible that we could be facing the end of paper computer games entirely. I haven't done one of these year in review videos in quite a while, but given everything I just said, it seems especially important to do one now, because all that doom and gloom isn't the only story of 2024 in PCGs. A lot more stuff happened throughout the year too, good stuff, and I think it's important to remember that too. So on January 1st of 2024, Anstarry returned, released yet another of his daily uploads with a new paper game called Save the Enclave. Basically, you have to protect your castle from a bunch of orcs who are invading. The game looks awesome, but unfortunately this was the last paper game he's ever made as of now, and it's been over a year since this one. On the very same day, January 1st, Multi-Paper also released part 2 of his paper game Maze Runner. I also played Tree with Via in January, which was a fun playthrough, and she took it in a different direction than I expected. I made a video on canon in paper computer games, exploring how there can be different things that are perceived as canon and how different canon stories can contradict each other and how to work that out. I also made the paper computer game Deer in January, and this is one of my of my few PCGs, which is actual commentary on the real world. I always feel uncomfortable doing those, and I'm always afraid I'm gonna offend people or something. Here is a game where you play as a deer and you have to try to evade the hunters, but there's no way to evade them forever, and eventually they do catch you and you die. The game is a tragedy. Like I said, I was afraid to make it, but I think it was pretty well received. People generally seem to like it, and I forget who, but someone mentioned it way later as influential to their own PCG, so that was pretty great to see. Now, my friend Kurt, who many of you will know as the creator of Tutorial Bot and many other classic characters, returned to PCGs after a decade. He was visiting from another state, and we hung out, and I hadn't seen him in many years. His first game in 10 years had no title, but it was mysterious and haunting and amazing. So he plays this guy trapped in this room with this giant guy, and you have to escape. It was one of the best PCGs by anyone in a while. Kurt did an amazing job. Certainly a worthy return of a legendary PCG creator. Also in January, Epic World's PCG made a lo-fi Figs music medley, which is pretty chill, and it's based on my PCG creatures called Figs, who, let's face it, don't deserve such a chill medley. Kurt's brother Keith also gave me pictures of his classic PCG, Zack to the Future, which is super influential on my and my friends' PCGs, but which I've never been able to show you. It's about Zack getting trapped in a world filled with dinosaurs and 8-balls and all sorts of things, because yes, the game is the first appearance of the 8-balls, and every screen is tremendously hostile. It was the first PCG that I really felt beaten by, and I never beat the game. And it was great to be able to finally tell that story, showing what I was talking about. Also in February, I made the case in a video that the homemade trading card game community should have a shared universe the way paper computer games do. There are challenges in that, but I argued that doesn't make it impossible. Skyscape TCG, a TCG creator, reacted to my video, and it inspired him to make Shards of the Multiverse, a TCG that many different creators could participate in. It was his attempt at unifying the HTCG community the way we have in the PCG community into one shared universe. I don't think the game ever came to fruition, unfortunately, but it was a noble attempt, and I'm proud that my video played a part in inspiring it. So not a ton happened in March of 2024, but I did make a short PCG called Squirrel of Dreamscape, which is basically my fan fiction based on Dreamscape by the classic paper game creator Reality Stupid. Meanwhile, Multi-Paper, who had been making games before this, but he did continue releasing his, I wouldn't call them games, they're paper stories based on the Archangel Saga paper computer games. For example, in his story, The Creator, he fleshed out more of the backstory of the Archangel from My PCG, A Friendly Game of Archangel Ball. So altogether, he made 7 of these stories, and he made them throughout 2024 and kept delving deeper into the lore of the Archangel saga and really built it out. In April, a new PCG creator, Jinx U92's PCGs, made his first ever game, The Wall Climbing Spider That Murked a Child, Googly Boy. You play as a spider who has to face off against Kim Jong-dur, who's basically just Kim Jong-un on the planet Spira. Now, this one gets pretty spicy, from the petrified poop to the BTS battle with actual Korean words. In May, I started making a series of videos about a bag of PCGs that Kurt gave me. It's a bag full of his old PCGs that had never been shown on this channel, and so I was just making a video every single day showing different games from the bag. I never actually made it through the bag, but I did get through about 7 videos in that day showing some incredibly classic games. Like, we looked at the original Zelda PCG, we looked at Malfoy the Mailbox Bot and its sequel, Malfoy Fired, and some of those games are incredibly influential on all the games that have followed, but you know, they've never gotten full look through, so I finally gave them to some of them. There's still a lot I haven't done, and I do want to finish that at some point. Now, in June, we got a really cool development, which is that Pat Dan, also known as Yak Games sometimes, Pat Dan returned to his YouTube channel called Pat Dan, which he'd started a long time ago, but he gave up on it after only a few live streams. But he finally decided he wanted to at least try being a YouTuber, so he was back to live streaming again. And his hope was to do, you know, some PCG stuff, some art stuff, and some other stuff just all mixed together. There's a lot of, you know, good content for him to cover. And between his art talents and his banter with chat, his streams have become consistently a fun place to be. And he's still streaming to this day. So you should definitely follow him. He is an excellent streamer. Also in June, I tried to promote the idea of a paper shared universe. Since the PCG universe, the shared universe of our paper computer games, isn't really only for paper computer games, people already make comics and short stories and all sorts of things, and even homemade TCGs set in the same universe as our paper computer games. I thought it made sense to acknowledge this, that it could be like a shared universe for multiple paper communities, not just ours, from PCGs to homemade TCGs to paper games. Anyone who wants to connect to it could. Also in June, Unleash TCGs was working on a PCG book and a live stream in June called the PCG Full Creation Guide, which is pretty darn cool. I'm not sure if that book ever saw the light of day. Finally, in June, I made a video reporting on difficulties with the PCG shop, which is a whole story in and of itself. I'm not going to get into that here, but hey, here we are in 2025, and somehow the PCG shop is still up, which is pretty darn cool. People are still posting paper computer games on it, and hey, that's something, right? By July, there were already a lot of people talking about doom and gloom for the PCG community. That was, you know, sort of was not helped by Epic Worlds PCG briefly taking down his videos. He did later restore them. He never really deleted them. They were only privated. But, you know, nonetheless, all of that inspired me to make a pep talk video where I point out that, hey, you know, like a lot of people were getting discouraged around that time. And so my pep talk video, I was like, hey, look, man, you know, all it takes is one single person to stay into PCGs, and that can be enough to build a whole community around it, right? There's also a new PCG by Red Rocks PCGs. He made a game called Meched Out Mike in July, where you play as a guy tied up by your feet and you have to escape, only to find out you're in a lab made by what appears to be an evil company called Secure Contamination Co. Now, in August, we got a new paper game by the legendary Detuned Paper. He's famous for his Detuned World paper game series, and his new paper game is called Stranded with Creatures. It's the first of his paper games to have a PCG character in it, so there's actually some crossover with the world with Detuned Paper's world. And this is Tutorial Bot, and he makes an appearance in the game. as the robot guiding you through this strange island. It is an alternate version of Tutorial Bot. He's not the same as the Tutorial Bot we know, but nonetheless, it is Tutorial Bot. And so in the game, you have to tame the strange creatures you find on the island in order to survive, and there are challenges to complete as well. So in September, I made the Maze PCG, which a new paper computer game, which takes an original game by Epic Worlds PCG, which was also called The Maze, and I expanded it, keeping the original puzzles while turning it into a full-blown maze, fleshing out its world and creating new story, lore, and even a final boss battle and a whole new race of enemies, the Dank. It's a maze where the more you wander it, the more you get lost, and all different characters react to that weird maze in different ways, some fighting against it while others succumb to the effects of it. The Maze was probably my most successful PCG in quite a while, getting over 900 views on YouTube and inspiring Epic to make his own remake of my remake of The Maze. Now, that hasn't happened yet, but hey, maybe someday it will. Here's hoping. Also in September, Epic Worlds released his new homemade trading card game, Perpetual Cosmos. Yes, this is a TCG, not a PCG, and I talked in the beginning about Epic Worlds moving away from PCGs to focus more on TCGs, so why am I talking about this? This is still an important part of PCG culture because, it's not just a TCG. All of Epic's TCGs, at least up to this point, take place in the PCG universe. And this game includes multiple characters from the PCG universe, such as Ickle Man, or Icicle Man, Zuvak, Beto, and many more. So the game is inspired by Van Gogh's artwork, and it's done in a unique hand-drawn style. It's very beautiful. Epic really outdid himself on this one. It's a really cool game to get into, and he's still making content for that, as well as going back to some of his earlier Epic Underworlds stuff. So in October, I found a treasure trove of childhood art, which included a lot of PCGs from when I was a kid. I made a video sorting through all of it, and it was wild to discover some of those old PCGs, some of which I just completely didn't remember at all. So while it was fun to sort through them, that felt like the tip of the iceberg. But don't worry, a video is coming on all the PCGs I was able to find in there. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I also, in October, made a video revisiting all of my modern PCGs. That was fun to do. And around the same time, user Mason released a new PCG on the PCG shop, which is called The Warrior's Mission. It's a fantasy game where you have to rescue a princess. It also wasn't the only game, since Bonkinator also released a game called Agent Goop, and Solo released a Sonic the Hedgehog game called Sonic and the Adventures of the New Islands. And of course, since October is spooky season, I made a quick one-page Halloween PCG. It was called Halloween Party, and it had some of the spookiest characters from different people's PCGs all gathered together. And you have to interact with all of them to beat the game. So in November, I got a PCG pen pal letter from Solo, which was pretty great. It was Ginkus themed, since Ginkus is his favorite character from the PCG universe. So it was awesome that one of my characters is someone's favorite. He included a full Ginkus PCG and lots of awesome Ginkus artwork. It was pretty darn great. And in December, I finally, way too late, I made an Archangel Saga video recapping the saga. Started in my one-page PCG, A Friendly Game of Archangel Ball. So in that simple game where you lost your ball and you have to get it back, but there's an Archangel in the way, it inspired an epic saga between me and mostly Multipaper and Epic Worlds PCG. Fleshing out the story and the lore of this game. It became an epic saga. It's got its own backstory, its lore. It's got entire new planets like Archanglia and characters like Elias and Grok in games by both of them. It was an awesome saga, and who knows, people might still add on to it. And that was the end of 2024.